The controlled demolition, why the world no longer makes sense. The illusion of chaos. If you look at the news today, including the war in Iran, drone strikes in Ukraine, energy prices skyrocketing, and food supply chains buckling, it looks like the world has simply descended into madness. You might think our leaders are incompetent or that these are random tragedies. But what if I told you that this is not chaos? What if I told you that what we are witnessing is a synthetic and organized dismantling of our entire industrial business model? Today, we are pulling back the curtain on the Great Reset to explain exactly how current events are being used to move you from a world of ownership to a world of total subservience. The energy strike breaking the flow rate. The first thing you need to understand is that the system does not need to run out of oil to destroy the economy. It just needs to stop the flow. Recent data shows that the conflict in Iran has taken approximately 20% of the world's oil and gas offline. To put that in perspective, the 1973 oil embargo that crippled the United States only involved a 7% disruption. We are in uncharted territory. The goal here is not just to make gas expensive. By taking energy offline, they are destroying the flow rate, which is the just-in-time delivery system that our entire global economy depends on. Without flow, debt cannot be refinanced. Without flow, the financial system begins to shatter. The inflation trap, debt on your back. This is where the plan gets sinister. By intentionally restricting commodities such as energy, helium for microchips, and fertilizer, they are triggering massive inflation. Inflation devalues national debt. Governments have run up trillions in debt they can never pay back. Inflation allows them to pay that debt back with cheaper dollars. Second, the masses pay the bill. The cost of that debt is effectively passed to you through the higher price of bread, gas, and rent. They are using inflation to burn off the debt of the elite while simultaneously creating a state of destitution for the masses. The food weapon, from scarcity to submission. The most effective way to suggest a new society to a population is to make them hungry. Simon Michaud's data reveals a terrifying leverage point. BRICS nations now control 72% of the world's grain stockpile, while the West holds less than 14%. Furthermore, the conflict in the Middle East and Ukraine has taken 20 to 25% of global fertilizer production offline. We are seeing hit after hit to the food system. This is not happening by accident. It is designed to create a threshold of civilization shock. When people are hungry, they are susceptible to suggestions they would never accept in a time of plenty. The final pivot, the deflationary bust and the great taking. The inflation is only the first phase. The ultimate goal of this engineered destitution is to trigger a planned deflationary bust. As the economy grinds to a halt under the weight of high prices and zero flow, the bubble pops. As we have discussed, your deposits make you an unsecured creditor. When the banks fail during this bust, they take your cash to save themselves. Anything you own that is secured by debt, like your mortgage or your car loan, will be called in. Because the legal ownership was changed to entitlement years ago, the asset firms like BlackRock and Vanguard will sweep in and pick up the real assets for pennies. The endgame, Agenda 2030, and the rent everything dystopia, this is where the evidence leads. The destination is the 2030 Great Reset. You will own nothing. Everything, including your home, your tools, and your very life, will be tokenized. You will no longer own. You will instead subscribe. This leads to total population control. This system will be managed by central bank digital currencies and social credit scores. If you do not comply with the sustainability mandates or the next medical lockdown, your programmable money is simply turned off. Dixon's work confirms this financial industrial complex is working in tandem with the tech and military complexes to ensure the narrative stays controlled while the plumbing is swapped out. Your only defense, it cannot be fixed because it is being intentionally destroyed. 1. Recognize the synthetic crisis. When you see a new shortage, know it is a tool for inflation and the eventual destitution. Move outside the grid. As I've said, the only way to win is to hold the hard assets like land, gold, and physical tools that cannot be tokenized or bailed in. 3. Reject the suggestion. They are betting on your fear. By understanding the plot, you can refuse to accept the digital cage when it is offered as a solution to the hunger they created. The century of design, from sovereignty to technocracy. To see where we are going in 2030, we have to look at the 100-year architecture of this cage. This is not a series of accidents. It is a timeline of intentional design. The League of Nations was the first true attempt at a global governing body after World War I. While it appeared to fail, it served as the prototype for the United Nations. Following World War II, the plan accelerated with Operation Gladio. This was a secret network of stay-behind armies established by the CIA and NATO across Europe. It proved that the globalists were willing to use state sponsored chaos and false flag operations to keep national populations in a state of fear and subservience. In 1968, the Club of Rome was founded. This group produced the book titled The Limits to Growth, which provided the Malthusian blueprint for the scarcity we see today. They openly stated that the common enemy of humanity is man himself, and they began the shift toward using environmentalism and population control as the primary tools for the Great Reset. The rise of the global managers, Bush Sr. and Clinton. The Bush Sr. administration was the moment the mask began to slip. Following the fall of the Soviet Union, George H.W. Bush publicly declared a new world order. Under his watch, the blueprint for the North American Free Trade Agreement was finalized. This was not about trade. It was about eroding the economic sovereignty of the United States, and the Clinton administration then accelerated the destruction of the American middle class. By signing NAFTA and China's entry into the World Trade Organization, Clinton oversaw the intentional hollowing out of American manufacturing. Simultaneously, the 1999 repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act removed the barrier between commercial and investment banking. This effectively turned your local bank into a gambling house, setting the stage for the 2008 collapse and the future bail-in regimes, 9/11 and the Patriot Act, trading freedom for the illusion of safety. The George W. Bush administration provided the ultimate catalyst for total population control. The events of September 11th allowed the system to implement the Patriot Act. This was a masterclass in psychological warfare. It made citizens, not terrorists, beg for safety by giving up our fundamental freedoms. For the first time, the government approved monitoring without warrants and the bulk collection of your private data. This was the birth of the surveillance state. They told you it was to find terrorists in caves, but the infrastructure was built to monitor the domestic population. It was the transition from a free society to a controlled technique where your every move is a data point for their AI systems. The destruction of the East, Ukraine, and the dollar. The year 2014 was another massive turning point. The Obama administration began aggressive interference in Ukraine. Convincing evidence shows that George Soros and his Open Society foundations funded the overthrow of the democratically elected Ukrainian government during the Maidan protests. This was the first step in creating a permanent friction point with Russia to justify the eventual destruction of the global financial system. When the Biden administration seized $300 billion in Russian sovereign assets, they sent a signal to every nation on earth. By weaponizing the dollar, they forced the world to start distrusting the U.S. Treasury bond. This was the intentional suicide of the petrodollar, clearing the way for a new digital and regionalized system. The agent of chaos finalizing the destruction. Many believe that Donald Trump is the enemy of this globalist plan. However, a closer look at his inner circle suggests he may be the agent of chaos tasked with finalizing the destruction of dollar trust. Consider the ties within his administration. Vice President J.D. Vance has deep and documented ties to Peter Thiel, a billionaire tech mogul whose firms are at the forefront of the AI surveillance state. Furthermore, Scott Bessent, a key advisor and potential treasury pick, was a mastermind at the George Soros firm during the famous attack on the British pound. That attack was used to break the pound and usher in the euro. These are specialists in controlled demolition. They are part of the faction that wants to burn down the international globalist model to replace it with the regional tech where you will own nothing. The visual evidence, the 2030 event horizon. As I have shared in my videos, the charts do not lie. When we look at the long-term cycles of capital rotation, they converge exactly between the years 2030 and 2032. The markets are being prepped right now. We see the historic rotation out of tech and into the suppressed energy and commodity markets. This is the smart money moving into the lifeboats before the engineered deflationary bust. The charts show a massive crossover point where paper wealth evaporates and tangible real assets become the only form of purchasing power. The road to Agenda 2030. From the League of Nations and Operation Gladio to the Patriot Act and the weaponization of the dollar, the plot is consistent. 1. First, they create the debt and the surveillance state. Yours too. Second, they create the war and the scarcity. 3. Third, they use the inflation to destroy the middle class. Fourth, and finally, they execute the Great Reset to tokenize every asset on Earth. By 2030, they intend for the transition to be complete. My family video evidence shows that the window to act is closing. If you are still holding paper when that event horizon hits, you are part of the collateral. The only exit is the 2029 rotation into the hard assets that the globalists cannot program or turn off.